All right, Adam, USC week. The Buffaloes still looking for that first ever win against the Trojans. 0-15, and we do predictions at the end, and we still will, but it's going to be 0-16. So, this is not the year that they're going to beat the Trojans, or at least I would be absolutely stunned if they did.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking back on the matchup with the Trojans, and there really were 3 times since Colorado joined the Pac-12 that during the game you felt like Colorado had a legit chance to finally break that losing streak against the Trojans. But there were times when they had an experienced quarterback. You look back in 2015 and 2016 when Cephalufau was a junior and then a senior. They played tough with the Trojans. And then Steven Montez's senior year in 2019. That's another game that they played tough against the Trojans. They don't have I know JT Shrout's a junior, but they don't have that experienced quarterback in terms of overall starts going into this game. And every sign would obviously point towards USC blowing this game out. And it's crazy too because 2 of those 3 games, 15 was the Cephalufau Liz Frank injury, where they had a lead in that game. And Montez in 2019 was playing fantastic football, one of his best games. Colorado had a 10-point lead going into the fourth quarter. He gets knocked out of bounds, what looked to be a late hit. They didn't call the penalty, but he was banged up after that play. He came back in the game, but didn't look the same after that. So you kind of look back and go, what could have been, and maybe in a couple of those instances. But this is not going to be the year. But it's a great carrot that this staff can at least kind of dangle in front of the players to at least keep them engaged this week. They've already said that they're basically down to playing for memories at this point. And that would be a hell of a memory. But like last week, the only people that believe they have any chance are the guys in that locker room.
Yeah, that 2019 game, the biggest moment for Blake Stenstrom as a Buffs quarterback. He had that 25-yard run in that. Remember when he came in for Montez for a play or two? But this is probably not it. They are playing for memories, but it's hard to see them being competitive in this one. They're 34-point underdogs. Last week they were 31.5-point underdogs, lose by 39 to Oregon, and really, was never competitive. I mean, they did play better defense, I thought, in the second half. I mean, they kind of shut things down a little bit. I think their run defense has actually been pretty solid since Gerald Chapman took over. I mean, they've allowed a couple of chunk plays, but overall pretty solid. And so I think there are some things you're seeing that, all right, there's some positives there. Unfortunately, one of the biggest positives in the last few weeks was Jordan Tyson, and that's a guy that he emerges as this explosive player for CU, and I think that it was allowing other guys like Montana Lamonius Craig and some other people to kind of open things up a little bit. I think it opened up the run game a little bit as well. Now you don't have that guy, and so it's going to be interesting to see not only who steps up at receiver, but how will that impact the offense as a whole when you lose a guy that all of a sudden was your most explosive guy.
RJ Sneed was the guy when they took him in as a transfer from Baylor that they thought was going to be the version of what Jordan Tyson was the previous 3 weeks before getting hurt. But R.J. Sneed, as all CU fans know, injured his foot in the spring showcase, and he beat the timetable. Initially, he wasn't expected to come back until October. He was out there for the season opener, but he just has not had much of an impact on this football team. Asked Mike Sanford, who's been stepping up receiver, he mentioned R.J. Sneed in his progression coming back from that injury as a guy that needs to step up now. We just haven't seen it. He mentioned Daniel Arias again. Love the kid. It's awesome that he came here, got his degree, but way too much of a sample size with him at receiver to think that there's going to be anything other than frustration out of him in that position. He's been here too long and dropped too many passes to think that he's going to be the answer there. So I think you look to R.J. Sneed and go, please find what you had at Baylor and show that here in these last 3 games because they desperately need it.
Well, I chatted with Phil McGagan, I believe it was before the ASU game, so about 2 weeks ago, and he mentioned R.J. Sneed, and the same thing, saying, I think he's finally back. I see a breakout coming. Well, it's been a couple games since then, and so I think everybody's still been kind of waiting for that. And, Daniel Arias, I agree with you, but there has been those plays in his career that you're like, wow, okay, that's a great play. So for CU to be competitive in this one, they need Danny Arias to make some of those plays and not drop the ball. They need RJ Sneed to be Baylor RJ Sneed. They need Montana Lamonius Craig to be the guy that showed up was at the Cal game. Had the 8 catches for over 100 yards. So they need those guys to kind of show up probably all at once. And then the other interesting thing I thought receiver wise was Chase Penry. Mike Sanford said that Chase Penry is going to be back this week, and I thought that was interesting. Chase has been a healthy scratch the last several weeks because the plan is to redshirt him. He's got 3 games in, and Sanford, he told us today that he's got 1 game to play, and this is going to be it. I mean, he's going to play this week against USC, and then probably shut it down. So that's the plan at least right now. But it's interesting that they're kind of putting out all the stops here. Let's see who we can get to make some plays here.
What do you have to lose, right? Yeah, absolutely. And Chase Penry got a little banged up in his freshman year as well. So it would have been a shame for him to have to deal with injury his first 2 years and then be a junior next year. So makes 100% sense for him to redshirt this year. But, yeah, if you've got 1 game left to play, you might as well play out at the Coliseum, Colorado's last ever trip out there. But to your point, Montana Lamonius Craig, we obviously have to mention him at receiver as well. It's cool that they named him an honorary captain this week because he's going back home. He's from Inglewood. So certainly he's not going to be lacking any motivation. And those guys like Mekhi Blackman, but that's going to be a real healthy competitive competition in this game that those receivers are going to want to make some big plays against him.
Yeah, I asked Montana about that yesterday on Monday, and he kind of smiled and said, "Yeah, looking forward to playing him," and just kind of left it at that. And but he did say he loves both him and Brendan Rice. Good friends with them, but he said we're not talking this week. So the other interesting is it's kind of been a passing game theme here today. But JT Shrout, we know he's the struggle with the accuracy, things like that. But his passing yards have gone up every week. I mean, he set a new career high 3 weeks in a row. I'm curious to see how much of that is because you've got Jordan Tyson you're throwing to, and how much of it is that he's getting more comfortable, and maybe that makes a difference that with some of these receivers that JT is getting more football under his belt, maybe helping with the timing. I don't know. I still think losing Jordan Tyson's the biggest deal with that passing game, but I'm trying to be a little positive here that maybe JT the more he plays gets a little more comfortable, and maybe there's something to that.
Yeah, you know me. I try to be an optimistic guy, and I like JT Shrout, and I want him to go out there and have a great performance. But I just don't think what we've seen with him as a starting quarterback leads you to believe that's going to have a positive result out there. You mentioned it on Saturday. Beautiful throw to Jordan Tyson, but the 2 throws before that probably should have been picked off by Oregon. Yeah. So, even some of the throws that aren't picked off should have been. So when you're applauding a guy for getting to 50%, I mean, that just kind of shows you where that position's been here since Owen McCown went down. So, I hope he proves me wrong. I don't see it.
And for him, he's playing close to home as well, so maybe there's some motivation there. A lot of those guys, Montana as well. Defensively, real quick, Adam, we've heard so many things about this defense playing better under Gerald Chapman. We've seen it, more impact plays, things like that. But now they're facing a USC team that has only had 1 turnover the entire season, and frankly, as good as better as the Buffs have played defensively, they've given up 42, 42, and 49 the last 3 weeks. So it's not like they're shutting teams down. They had that great game against Cal. They're still giving up a lot of points. It's hard to see USC not scoring. I don't want to say at will, but pretty close to at will this week.
Yeah, I mean, Mario Williams is playing about as well as any quarterback in the country. Caleb Williams. 28 touchdowns, 1 interception. He's a threat on the ground. You got Travis Dye at running back, averaging almost 100 yards per game. They didn't even need Jordan Addison and Mario Williams to put up a bunch of points against Cal last week. We don't know if those guys are going to be back. If they're back, I mean, just look out. I mean, they're going to score at will if they show up to the Coliseum ready to play. Now, they've got a big game coming up against UCLA in the Rose Bowl the following week. They they play Notre Dame at home the following week. So I really think the only hope, for a Colorado fan out there is that USC doesn't really take CU seriously coming into this game, and then Colorado goes out there, catches lightning in a bottle. But I mean, based on what USC has done offensively this year and Colorado's defense, I mean, you would think that USC could kind of name their score in this game.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think USC probably does have a tendency to be disinterested in an opponent like this. However, I think Mekhi Blackman and Brennan Rice being there might increase that a little bit, and those guys want to play and they want to beat CU. So it's going to be interesting to see what this looks like. So let's go score prediction. What do you think?
USC's defense has given up a lot of points in the last 3 weeks, an average of 38 points a game in the last 3 weeks. But part of that too is that USC's offense just scores so quick that there's more possessions for the other team's offense, and so that's played into them giving up quite a few points here recently as well. And Cal made a late run at them last week, but I don't know. With Jordan Tyson going down, I just don't really see Colorado scoring enough points, and like I mentioned, I think USC kind of names their score. Give me USC winning this game, let's say 55-13.
Okay. I'm thinking along the same lines, although I do think USC, once they get up big, they'll kind of their lack of interest will show up a little bit, and I think they'll get a big lead. I'm going to go USC 45-17. I think that the Trojans win this fairly easily. The Buffs maybe get a late one, but the Trojans give up points, but so did Oregon, and CU still only had 10 points with Jordan Tyson most of the game. So it's tough to see them scoring a lot of points. There's still 20 points is still kind of that benchmark for CU, even though they got the 34 against ASU. But 20 is still that benchmark, and they've only reached it a couple times. So it's going to be a tough one out there.
Yeah. It's funny. Our daughter is 11, and she really wants to get her ears pierced. And I don't know how she came up with this, but her thought was, if Colorado gets 3 wins, will you guys let me get my ears pierced? So we said, sure. I mean, not that we were worried about Colorado getting 3 wins and that happening. But so I had to kind of break it down to her on the car ride to school today that, Aubrey, Colorado isn't going to win 3 football games this year. Are you going to be okay with that? We can probably still get your ears pierced. And she goes, I'll just wait till next year, I guess. So I had to break it to an 11-year-old today that Colorado probably isn't going to get another win this year. She was heartbroken at first, but she's already looking ahead to 2023.
I was wondering where you were going with that 11-year-old ear piercing story, but that's a good one. It probably won't be win number 2 this week, but either way, you and I are going to be in the Coliseum on Friday night, and we'll talk about it afterwards.